Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and today I have for you my August, September, and October wrap-up. So, in the 3 months, I have read a total of 14 books. So, on average, about 4.5 books a month. So, while for other people that may be like a short amount of books to read, the fall semester started. There's virtual school, so I work in a school. School is online, so it's virtual. My kids are virtual. And then I started my college classes back. So there's a lot of reading for my college classes. There's a lot of homework assignments. As you guys know, because I've said it many times on my channel. So all in all, I've been just really busy. So I've been getting in reading where I can, when I can, and if there's an audiobook on Overdrive or Hoopla, or the two apps that I use. And how do I stop that? I don't even know how to. Okay, there we go. For that, so this is going to be a quick video. Because that phone call you heard is actually a phone call that I need to go to. So, really quick, we're going to say for the Christian Readathon, there were 6 prompts. I will have somewhere in the description box below what those 6 prompts are. I don't want to go through them all because I kind of failed the Readathon in the sense of I didn't read all of the books. But let me show you. East of Eden was the book that was on that list. Be Real, because being fake is exhausting. That was on there. Michael Franchise's okay, Blood Covenant by Michael Franchise. That was on there. And those are the books that I completed, okay? And the books that I am still in the process of reading, because these are actually not books that you can read straight through, like I assumed that they were. I assumed that they were because I didn't really look through the book, didn't really see if the books were study guide type of books, or if I knew one of them was. And that book I actually don't have in front of me because I misplaced it. So there were actually 7, I think 7 prompts. Oh no, it's right here, actually. I'm tripping. No, so there were 6 prompts. But anyway, this book I knew we had to do together with a group. Because of Halloween and some other church events, we cut this book short. But I still read some of the chapters on my own. I just didn't read them in time enough to be finished with the Christian Readathon. There was a lot of highlighting, underlining, and writing in the margins that had to be done. This was actually a book that had to be the same way, which I did not realize. I did not know, did not realize. This is more of a historical book, and it goes through the Bible and the history of Black people through the Bible, starting in Genesis all the way through. And there is a, oh, you can see that way. There you go. There's some highlighting and whatnot done in the margins and whatnot as well, because this is a book that you actually have to study through. So this may be on a wrap up in January or February as a book that I actually completed. So it didn't go over as planned. This book is similar to this book, and they're both about relationships. One is just from a perspective of a white Southern man, and this one is from a perspective of a black man, and I actually don't know. Oh, New Jersey, so a little bit further up and over. So two different perspectives, but they overlap so much. A lot of what's in here is what's in here. What's in here is what's in here. Just told from different perspectives, and I say different perspective because they use their own experiences as well as people around them. So these are really good books. Do I agree with every single thing that's in there? No, because my experiences are different from theirs. This one I just recommend everyone to read because it's the history of Black people in the Bible, like, you know, our culture in the Bible, and how God really meant for, you know, all of us to live together in harmony regardless of our differences, because we weren't disliked for our differences. God sent his son to die for us because of our differences. So I think this is really important for all people, whether you're black or white or brown. I think that it's just a really good book to know the history of people that you care about and you love. This book was a testimony, because I know that was one of the prompts. This book is also about relationships, but it's mainly about you yourself and how you need to be open and real with people and not wear a mask, because it does get exhausting. This is East of Eden. It's kind of like an Adam and Eve adaptation, and John Steinbeck himself is in the book, but not in the book. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like him or his family. They talk about him like towards the middle or end of the book. But it pretty much goes like, you know, with the civilization and businesses starting up, and, you know, people fighting through that. And I hate this book. It's a good book. It's a good lineage story that's in it, but the names that were used for colored people I did not like. But the relationship, or the respect, not necessarily the relationship, but the respect for a black woman that's in this book, I kind of admired a little bit, because they spoke about her with respect. Around the time, this is a spoiler, so around the time that she passed away, they spoke about her with a bit more respect than you know, black people are usually talked about during the time period in which this was written. But I don't like the way black people were talked about in this book. I do know that was the time period, but for me personally, you know, no excuse. But it is still a good book. It's a good story. It's a good book. It teaches people how you can't really just force someone to be with you. That you have to really get to know people and make sure that they're on the same level as you, because they can bring your world down. It teaches you how to read your own feelings, look from within, what you can give to other people. There's a lot of good lessons in there. So before I continue, I will be right back. All right, sorry about that. Oh, actually, let me take these off. I don't even know if you guys can hear me. There we go. All right. So now we're back. Sorry about that. Okay. So our next book that is on the list is, yes, I had to write down the list. Y'all, because it was too many books for me to remember. Actually, I need to show you guys this. All right, so the next book on the list that I read is The Changeling by Victor, I believe it's Lavelle. There we go. So this is an adaptation to the poem, the original poem, The Changeling. And that poem is about a changeling being switched with a human baby. And this is an adaptation of that, but this also touches on issues of race, as well as just the fear in and of itself of, a child that isn't yours, that you thought was yours, but you don't know how to explain to people that it's not yours because they'll think you're crazy. And then you have to add on the fear of, walking down the street and being stopped because you're black, not because you did anything wrong. This book was creepy. Now, I don't think it was in the gory sense of like bloods and guts, creepy. I don't think it was that type of horror, but it was very much so mystery, horror, thriller. I don't know if Changeling is considered sci-fi, but if it isn't, it should be. Maybe I just don't have a good definition of what sci-fi is. But yeah, it was a really good book. I highly recommend this book. It was an easy read. It was an easy listen, because I also was reading it while I was listening. And I checked it out from Overdrive from my library. Just overall really good book. I would definitely reread. I'm going to put that on my wish list so I can buy it, so it'd be easier for me to reread. Next book on my list is Keep Pedaling by Wintra Johnson. So this book is special to me because I know the author. I actually work with the author. She is a coworker of mine, and she is just an overall amazing woman. There's just no one or two ways about it. She just is. So this book is about a 5-year-old, it's about a girl trying to grow up in the shadows of 5 older sisters. Okay, so let me just read you what the back of this says. Okay, all right. It says, a scared little girl. Also, my kids are playing. That I can't keep them quiet. They're playing. They're not bothering anybody, and that's good for me. They're just loud. Sorry. It says, a scared little girl from the villa battles loneliness and the challenges of growing up in the shadows of 5 older sisters. How can she overcome the challenges when there's no conversation within the home? Perhaps she doesn't. Depression sets in, and she must learn to overcome this dark secret within the African American community. Will she learn to live again to discover her beauty within? And I say yes. Yes, she absolutely does. She does live again. She does discover her beauty, because this woman is a beautiful woman. I know she's probably heard that a lot of times, but she really is. She's a remarkable mentor, and this book just made me love her even more. So there are some books that I cannot highlight cannot write on, and this is one of them. Although you can see it has that like weird sort of cover, so any oil on your fingers just come off on the cover. So my cover is ruined, which kind of upsets me a little bit because I'm very, very, very particular about my books. Even though I know it's like impossible to keep paperbacks like in pristine condition. I feel like it's a thing. It's a thing that I need to figure out how to do. It won't happen, but I can try, right? But anyway, so as you could see, I keep looking over here because I've showed you guys a couple of books where I actually did highlight in them, but these were books that I was doing studies in. These weren't like storyline books. These were books that are, history, you study, you mark it down, you discuss it with the people you're studying with, right? I wasn't doing a study with this. This is written in story format. So I didn't want to mess up the story by adding my words in it, because for me, that's rewriting the story. That's not what I want to do. So I have spots where I just wrote down on my sticky notes, and I put my sticky notes in the area closest to what paragraphs that I wanted to talk about. So I made sure I did that so it can, stay with it. I don't think I'll ever let anybody borrow this book, so I don't have to worry about my sticky notes getting all messed up. And then it says this. So when I write something like that, this is me, girl, this right here, this. Okay, if you don't know what that means, I'm sorry. That's about as good as I can get. I am excited because she did sign it. I don't know, one day she might get super, super famous where she retires somewhere else as a book writer, like a retired book writer, a retired teacher that's still a book writer. And she may not be as close. So I have her autograph, and that also means something to me. So this book goes from the time that Wintra was a very young age. It starts in 1961, and then it goes into her adult years. Ouch. And it goes into her adult years. The book pretty much I don't think that this book talks about parents not doing a good job. I think this book talks about parents doing the best they can with what they have. So for me, it seemed like Wintra's mom may not have had either the time or the tools to be able to sit down and know how to manage to have a deeper conversation where things can be talked about and out there on the table. In the African American community, it's almost like we don't talk about things. We're too scared to talk about things because we've been oppressed for so long that we want to seem and be known as these incredibly strong people. But what I think some African American people fail to realize is that you can be a strong African American woman or male and need to talk to someone, because God didn't put us here alone to talk with no one. He put people around us for a reason. We need community. God gave Adam Eve so he can have a partner, so he can have community. From there, communities and people came about. So he didn't put us here to be alone. We need to be with other people, right? So there's this stigma with the African American community that we can't do that because that's showing our weakness, and et cetera, et cetera. But it needs to be done. And I think this book is a perfect example of why it needs to be done, because we live with these ideas in our head and these thoughts that don't go anywhere, but they mess us up on the inside. And we need to get them out. I think this was very well articulated. It told the story of events that led up to her depression, that led up to her, wanting to keep all these things inside and not wanting to share them with other people. And then it followed events that hit her hard enough to where she realized that she needed to get help, that she needed, that grace from people that let her, stay with them for a little while until she got up on her feet. She needed that community that would listen to her, that would help her, that would not shun her, but will let her know that she is this beautiful woman of God, this beautiful Black woman, that it is okay for her to talk about things, that it's okay for her to say no to other things, so that way she can also keep herself, on a good path. One thing I remember her always telling me during school hours, when things were just so hectic and crazy with our students at work, she would always be like, you have to leave work at work. You can't take it home. If you take it home, it should be only with grading papers, and then everything else stays. Now, if you're friends with a coworker outside of work, you would think, oh, you're taking work home. No. Some people have a limit. We can talk about it for maybe 1 hour, and we have to be done with it. We need to talk about other things, and it's not that you're pushing it under the rug. It's not that you just are pushing it way, way behind. It's just work is work and home is home. You know, when you're at home, you need to, you know, relieve those things. And she would always say, you know, I'm just not going to go back there. And I never knew, but I also have a job title to where I wasn't always in her classroom. I saw her during lunch periods. If I had to go in her classroom for indoor recess, when she was picking up her students from lunch or recess, or if I had to sub because she had to come out for a meeting, or you know, the break room if we just so happened to have our lunch at the same time, because my schedule changed obviously more than hers because she was a classroom teacher. So like we had interactions, and she was able to give me some very great advice during our interactions. This book just makes me love her even more. I rated this book on Goodreads as a 5 out of 5 stars. I don't usually rate autobiographies, whether they are fictional autobiographies, like, you know, fiction based on a true story, or if they're autobiographies, or, you know, well, I forget what the other ones are called, where someone else is telling the story of someone. But anyway, I don't usually rate those because to me it's rude to give a rating to how I think about somebody else's life. Like, they're telling their story, so that's rude. But I gave it a 5 out of 5 because it has no ratings on Goodreads at the moment, because it's a new book and I want people to see this book. I want it to get out there. I want, you know, I want to help her spread her word, I guess is what it is. I want to help her spread her story so people can see that you can be a strong Black African American woman or male and still talk about things that are important, that need to be talked about, so you don't hold all of this stuff inside, and you won't get to the point to where you have to battle this depression alone. Like, even if you still end up being severely depressed, or just a little depressed, or in the middle depressed. I know there's names for all of those levels. I just can't think of them at the moment, because I did look them up. So there is a diagnosis for them. For when there's treatment, they have to have a diagnosis so they know how to treat a patient, whether it's with medicine or behavioral treatment. But I don't know. I think this is a great book, and I recommend everyone to read it. I just wanted it to get some acknowledgement on Goodreads, so that way people can see it and be like, oh, let me see what this book is about. So I did give it that rating for that reason. Next on my list, I read a lot of books for me with all of my school and stuff. Next book for me, Carrie by Stephen King. Oh, Carrie by Stephen King. Okay, so I'm only going to keep this book because I am trying to get all of Stephen King's books. But at the same time, I'm thinking that I should just go ahead and give it back. Give it back to Amazon. I did not like this book. I did not like it, okay? First of all, I think the film adaptation is great standalone, but bad at the same time, because the film adaptation was similar to this novel, but the description of Carrie and Carrie's mom is completely different in the movie. I didn't like that. The book, they are described as heavier set women, like curvy women, and they used a woman that wasn't the description, like to me personally, complete opposite of the description. I didn't like that. I think they should have used a woman that was very close to what was described in the book. I think that would have made the adaptation a little bit better. But because the book jumped around so much with like journals, like psychology journals and news articles of the prom night, it was just all over the place. it's not organized how his new writing is. And I understand this is his very first one. So very first books, you know, you get better with time. Obviously, he's gotten a lot better because his, like, this is like one long thing with 3 parts, and the third part I think being the prom night, like the wreckage after the prom night actually. And I think the second part is prom night. Yep. And then the first part is just the first part of the book. So he still breaks his books up into parts, which I like. But he also broke it up even more into smaller chapters. And then in some of his books, he would label the chapters in a way to where you knew it was a flashback or you knew it was present time. This book goes from like the flashback of the prom night or the event in the shower, the name calling and all that stuff before the getting the prom taken away from you, to the prom night, to after the prom night, right? That is all the past. The present in this book is talking about the interviews of the people when they were talking about what happened in the shower, how they treated Carrie, the prom night, the wreckage, the, you know, half the town being blown to bits, you know, all that stuff. But it was wrote such a weird sort of way. It so weird. Another thing is the rating I gave this book was a 3.5 stars. And it was only a 3.5 stars because the shower scene was everything I thought it was going to be. The prom was everything I thought it was going to be. The blowing up, the wreckage, all that stuff was exactly how I thought it was going to be, right? Her at home, the interactions with her mom, everything that the movie adaptation was. What I didn't like is that it was boring. It moved slow. It was just boring. There wasn't much there. Also, it came down a star for me, a complete star for me, because we can't skip the racism in this book. The way it described black people as negroids. There was one scene that talked about a corner being as dirty as a negroid or something like that. And then there was another scene where the boyfriend of the girl who pulled the string of the blood that fell on Carrie and the boyfriend, which I don't think it showed in the movie, but the boyfriend actually died from the bucket hitting him. Like, he eventually, or not the boyfriend, the guy who took Carrie to prom, he ended up eventually like dying from the way that the bucket hit him, which that was different from the movie, so spoiler. But anyway, but that when the boyfriend of the girl who pulled the string, in a different scene with that girl, he punched her in the lip or something like that when they were coming back telling her, oh, did you hear about Carrie blowing up the school, etc., etc., etc. And he turns around and he punches her in the face. They describe her lip being swollen like a negroid. Like, black people just got these big old lips, and her lip was swollen like that. And I'm trying to give Stephen King the benefit of the doubt because his books have gotten better. He seems to have gotten better as a person, you know, up till now, or not till now, because this was old. So from this till now, but this was just, there's no way around the racist terms in here, the derogatory terms in here. Now, whether or not he meant them personally on the inside, or if that's just the way the time was when he wrote it, there's no excuse for either one of those for me. And I did not appreciate that. So, 4 stars because it was okay. Another star off because it was still boring. And it did not get 5 stars because of the racism in it. This was just a bad book. I didn't like it. So if I decide that I'm gonna give it up, I'll probably put it back on Amazon and see if I can get some money for it. But everybody I know who likes Stephen King loathes this book, so I don't think I'm gonna be able to get rid of it. But, you know, I'm trying to read all of his books. So it is what it is. Another book that I've already talked about in a different wrap up, the Tome Topple wrap up, that's also on this list because it was read in August, is Roots. This actually took most of that week for, is it 2 weeks? 2 weeks for the Tome Topple. This book is bigger than East of Eden because I had also talked about that on Tome Topple. But I love this book. I read this book all the way through when I was in high school and didn't even realize that I had read it. And I chose this book for my Tome Topple because I was like, I need to read this book. I don't understand why I haven't read this book already, because I've watched the TV movie or TV series with my stepdad when I was younger. And I believe there is an updated version of this book. But like the movie, like there's 2 parts in the movie. There's the old one and then there's the new movie. Anywho, this is the, what anniversary? 30th anniversary edition of it. But this is actually my second time reading through it because I was like, oh, I think this is this and this and this happened. And I wrote it down on a note. And then when I read the book, I was like, I did read all of this, but really good book. Highly recommend it. You want to know my thoughts on it though, you can read my Tome Topple wrap up. But I feel like anybody who is African American or loves someone that's African American, I believe that this is a good one to read because it's so rich in going back to find as much out as possible about where you come from as a person, to know your ancestry. I will be planning to get an ancestry because I just want to know, because I know I have Indian, American Indian in my blood, but I also know that I'm Black as well. So I don't know if that's Black Indian from America or if that's Black from Africa, and I would like to know. And this book is just amazing. I think I did rate this book, but this is also like a semi autobiography, so I was trying not to be, yeah, I did the same thing. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars for the same thing. So any person, it doesn't matter, black, white, green, or orange, if I'm reading your book and it's an autobiography, you could probably get a 5 out of 5 because I think it's rude to give anything less when you're sharing your story. All right, next on my list is Halloween, scary Halloween stories for kids. This was part of my Fright week readathon, which I think I probably have to do a separate wrap up for that, but this is Fright week. It is scary stories for kids. Let me tell you, I would not let my 5-year-old or not my 5-year-old, I would not let my 9-year-old or my 4-year-old read this. They would get nightmares. This is a little bit too scary for younger kids, in my personal opinion. And I read some pretty crazy stuff. I read another book by Victor Lavelle, but it's a comic book, and it's called The Destroyer. It's also amazing, but it is a retelling of Frankenstein. Only this is a Black mother who is bringing her Black son back to life after he has been killed. Walking home, someone calls the police on him because they think that he is a grown, this kid is clearly like 8 or 9 years old, I believe. No, 12. I think he's 12-year-old. He's clearly 12, but the police was called on him because he was walking home with a bat in his hand, and I believe the comic book said that he was a grown man walking down the street waving it's a machine gun of some sort. I want to say that the comic said a rifle, but I'm not very sure. Yeah, but it says that he's walking home with it. So instead of people calling the police and letting the police handle it, there was a car full of men, I believe it was, that took it upon themselves to approach the young boy and they killed him. No gun was found. So the mom brings her son back to life, and so obviously there's racial issues in it that it talks about. And I mean, the work is magnificent. The illustrator did a very good job. Everybody who worked on this did a really good job. I read volumes 1 through 6, so I read it all the way through to the end. I also think that Victor did a great job of like an homage, I think they call it, or let me tip my hat to Mary Shelley for Frankenstein. Like he represented her very amazingly, because if you know Mary Shelley's story, she has lost in her life at the moment that she wrote Frankenstein, and that was a representation of her loss and of her grief. So I thought that was pretty cool. Another book that I read was also part of my Fright week. Also, hold on, I just did not mention that, but The Destroyer was also part of my Fright week readathon. And this book was as well. It is Halloween by Curtis Richards. It is the novelization of Halloween. So it was pretty much like a written script of the movie Halloween. The end. Really great. I listened to this though because you can't find many printed copies, and I think the only novelization copy that you can find is on Kindle, but I think it's written by a different author, I want to say. Not sure. But I read this one because it's like literally word from word the movie, the original Halloween movie. And I listened to it on YouTube from a YouTuber named the 80s Slasher Librarian. And I will try to remember to link his channel below, along with the prompts for what is this, for the Christian Readathon. I will do better with the Christian Readathon the next time that I do it. I will do better. I'm gonna have to make sure that the books are books that I can read on my own, as well as one book that I can read with other people, but that we actually can get through the book, or at least I can get through the book if we don't get through it together. Because even though you read books with other people, you don't necessarily have to always wait on them. I think it's good to wait on them, but it happens. All right, next book. I gave this also a 5 out of 5 stars. This book is called The Last Flight by Julie Clark. There's not much I can say about this book where I don't give away the plot, okay? I thought the timeline in which they overlap the stories was really great. This book is about 2 women who are running away from their past. One woman was a drug dealer / the person who cooked up the drugs, and it wasn't heroin or meth. It was some other sort of thing that they sold to college people so that they can study and pass exams and just be more alert and aware of things, but it wasn't a strung out druggie. Like, they had a rule to never sell to heroin addicts or meth addicts, that sort of thing. I guess they're choosing the lesser of 2 evils. And then there's a woman who is the wife of a very rich and prestigious man, I guess, if you will, whose first wife disappeared mysteriously. Or not. Okay, so she disappeared, but she died. Like, she died. But what's mysterious about her death is that it was like out of nowhere. That's what I meant to say. Her death was out of nowhere. Okay. Thoughts on this book. I thought it was done really well. The chapters were short, so it was easy to get through. I did not like the print itself. It was too tiny. So I did find a audiobook on YouTube where halfway through the book. I think I read half the book on my own. Then I just couldn't because the print was too small. So I still read it along with the audiobook, but I found an audiobook on YouTube. And we got through the rest of it. I'm mad at the ending of this book. I'm big mad. I didn't expect for the ending to end the way it did, but I appreciate the ending because it wasn't a fairy tale ending like some mystery thriller sort of novels can be. To where it's this big old thing this happens and you can pretty much predict what the ending is going to be. The only factor in there that you can't always predict is who did it. This one I just didn't see coming. Like, I really enjoyed it. I did not see it coming. I had anxiety almost the entire time I was reading this book. So will I read it again? Not quite sure. Even though I know what the ending is going to be, there was way too many times where I was sitting there like, oh my goodness, no, she didn't. Oh my goodness, girl, don't get caught. Like, it was almost as if I was watching a movie. Like, it was almost like I was watching a movie and like, girl, get out of there, girl, stop. Like, that's pretty much how I read this book. Yeah, it was really good. All right, next book on my list was Camila by J Readathon. It's a gothic classic. Sorry. That's what the cover looks like now. I don't know what it looked like then, but it's a gothic classic. It's pretty much like the female Dracula. That's how I describe it. Some people would disagree, but that's how I describe it. I gave this book a, what did I say? A 2.5. Gave this book a 2.5. While I admire what was going on here, it was boring. The end. Yep.
It's me.
I got 2 more books. You want to come in?
Huh?
I said I got 2 more books to talk about. You want to come in?
No.
Oh.
I gotta get something.
Okay. Hold on. Let me pause. He's funny. No, this book was just boring. I admire it for the time period. It moved very romantically slow, kind of like Frankenstein moved very, very slow. I mean, the storyline of like the Gothic period, everything you read, the novels are really slow, so you really go through it with them, and we're just used to fast pace, I believe. I know I am. Like, I can't speak for everybody else, but I'm used to fast pace. I thought the story itself was good, which is why it got the full 2.5 stars. The storyline was good. It was an adorable read. I can't remember half of what I read. It was just so boring. Next on my list is The Haunted Mask. It's Goosebumps. So, of course, it's great. This was part of my challenge for Are You Into Horror? This book, and there was another book that I read for Are You Into Horror? Camila, sorry. That was a book that I read for my challenge from the YouTube channel Are You Into Horror? He had 3 books, 3 prompts, one for the month of August, one for the month of September, and then one for the month of October. And I can't remember what all 3 prompts were, so I'll try to link his exact video into the description so you can know what the prompts are. So, The Haunted Mask 2, I didn't even know that there was a Haunted Mask 2. Honestly, I didn't even know. But there is a Haunted Mask 2. And what's crazy is I grew up on Goosebumps. I love Goosebumps. I now have half of the old set of Goosebumps books because I found them at the Goodwill and they were 50 cents each. And whoever did that was mean to turn them in, but thank you because now I have them. But this one follows the two friends, Steve and Chuck. Um, Unlike what you thought it would be. Some people thought this book would have followed Lori Beth, I believe her name is, brother, because the brother put on the mask at the end of the first book, and it was told to us at the end of the first book that once the mask gets put back on, it's hard to get off. Well, we don't even know what happened to Lori Beth's brother, but I'm assuming things were good because Lori Beth seemed fine in the book, other than the fact that she, even though she didn't like Chuck and Steve for picking on her, she didn't want them to, you know, have the mask or go to that store to get a mask like it. Well, in this book, the shop where she bought her mask closed down, and she ends up telling Chuck and Steve where she got it from, because of course they were being little punks and messing with her. So they went to go get they broke into the old place and both of them stole a mask. And so it follows them on Halloween and their experience of the mask that they put on that they stole. And it ends with, I believe it's Chuck not being able to get his mask off after they get the mask off of Steve. So it's pretty much just a spoiler of how it's going to end. Sorry about that. But it's a really good book. I think people should read it because it's goosebumps. All right. So, and then the last book I read for the challenge for by the Are You Into Horror guy. I forget the name of the challenge. That's why I keep saying his channel name, and I apologize. Okay. I'm trying to do this a little bit faster because this is already too long. Like this video is like way too long. All right, so Lawrence Wright is the author, and the name of this book is The End of October. And let me tell you, great book, great read. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars because it was pretty much too close to what's going on now with the pandemic. This story follows a pandemic called the Congolese virus, or the Congolese disease. I'm not going to tell you the end of this book. I'm not going to tell you where this disease broke out, but it talks about the coronavirus strands because, and I say because there's more than one coronavirus strand. If you don't already know that, that's why people are telling you that those Clorox wipes don't kill corona on the surface like you think it does. Like, it helps keep the surface of your stuff clean and all that jazz, but it's not the same coronavirus, because on the back of that you'll see that it says that it, you know, kills the coronavirus. Different strand of the coronavirus, people. There's 3 strands. The one we're dealing with is not the strand that they're talking about on the back of that. Anyway, it talks about the coronavirus, the strand that we're dealing with. It talks about the flu pandemic and other pandemic diseases. It talks about pretty much dystopian-like communities, how this virus runs through the communities. It talks about pretty much disease warfare. There's another word that I'm looking for and I just can't find it, but it's like warfare using diseases and how it just got out of control because people didn't know how to control it, and they let it go without having a cure for the virus. So there's that. And the Russians are talked about a lot in this. So yeah, that's a lot of books. This is longer than what I thought. Thank you guys for staying to the end. And until next time, bye. Actually, I have to come back. I didn't say what I really thought of the book. I just said I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So, The End of October, it's a really good book. I recommend it as a good read. A good, I don't know if it qualifies as sci-fi or a conspiracy theory read. I don't know what the read qualifies for, but I recommend it as a read. But I do not recommend it as a read for people who are having a hard time in this pandemic right now. I do not recommend that at all, because this will only drive you crazy. It'll make you more anxious. You'll just become this big crazy person, and that's not my intention. So I do not recommend this book to people that are having a hard time with the virus. So now there, that's the end of the video. And until next time, bye. Please subscribe.